It's going to happen. And so the price of silver has got to go up. Silver is a bargain. And, you got to buy it. I mean, I've been talking about it for years. I think that gold is going to outpace the cost of mining it, especially now, like I said.
Peter Schiff says silver is one of the best deals right now. The gold-silver ratio shows silver is extremely undervalued compared to gold, and Schiff believes silver prices are set to rise. Back in 1980, silver hit $50 an ounce, but today, it's still far below that, making it a bargain. While gold has surged nearly 10 times since 2000, silver hasn't yet caught up. Schiff sees this gap as a huge opportunity for investors. Gold and silver are heading for new highs, so now might be the perfect time to buy silver.
It's going to happen. I mean, they're going to supplant the dollar. It's only a question of when, not a question of if. The timetable, I think, was accelerated by the Biden administration's sanctions against Russia, which really was a wake-up call to the world that you need to get out of the dollar, that you're too vulnerable. You're basically beholden to the whim of the United States to impose sanctions on you if they don't like something that you've done. That should be particularly problematic for the Chinese, because we're constantly criticizing the Chinese. It doesn't make sense for them to put themselves in this position. So obviously, they're going to be moving away from the dollar. That's why the price of gold keeps hitting new record highs, even though American citizens have been selling their gold all year. So have a lot of other Europeans. It's foreign central banks and people in the BRIC countries that have been buying the gold that Americans have been selling, and they're doing it for a reason. They're going to keep on buying it. The price is going to keep rising. Eventually, the American investors who sold their gold are going to try to buy it back. Of course, it's going to cost a lot more money, and people who never bought any gold are going to start buying gold, and so then the prices are going to start to move up much faster. I mean, so far it's been a very slow, orderly ascent. There's been a lot of doubters, a lot of naysayers. The gold stocks, the silver stocks, are dragged behind very reluctantly. Every once in a while they make new highs, but then they get clobbered the minute gold goes down $50. It's like, oh my God, this is it. It's going to crash. But once we really get north of 3,000, 4,000, who knows? You're not going to have all that negativity surrounding the gold bull market. People are going to accept that gold prices are going up. And it's really not gold prices going up. It's the value of the dollar and other fiat currencies going down. When our republic was formed in 1789, you only needed $20 to buy an ounce of gold. When we formed the Federal Reserve, well over 100 years later, in 1913, you only needed $20 to buy an ounce of gold. And even as late as 1970, you only needed $35 to buy an ounce of gold. Now you need $2,600. Now, it's not because gold has changed. It's exactly the same. It's the dollar that's changed. It's worth a lot less because we have so many more of them in circulation relative to how much gold we have. And the rate at which dollars are created is going to increase exponentially in the years ahead. And so gold prices are going to go parabolic. Silver is cheap. And again, I've thought that for a long time, and it's been cheap for a long time. I mean, if you look at the gold-silver ratio, silver is cheap relative to gold. And so the price of silver has got to go up. I mean, there's nothing guaranteed in life, but to me, this is about as close as you're going to get. Silver prices are going to go up, right? Silver was $50 in 1980. I mean, how many things could you buy today for less than they cost in 1980? I mean, other than electronics, right? Like a television or something. But a commodity? I mean, silver is a bargain. And, you got to buy it. I mean, I've been talking about it for years. And, I remember when silver was under $5, under $4, when the century started. So it's been going up, but it was so cheap. In 2000, 2001, with $4 or $5, gold was under $300 an ounce. Gold has gone up more than 10x so far this century. It's almost not quite 10, but nine times. The Dow is only up a little over 4 times. The Dow was about 10,000. Now it's a little over 40,000. So in terms of gold, the Dow has actually gone down. But it's still, I think, expensive relative to gold if you take a broader historic look at it. So the stock market is expensive. What's also cheap is oil. Oil prices are very cheap. You can get almost 40 barrels of oil for an ounce of gold. That is historically cheap. That means that oil prices are not going to stay at this level. They are going up. And that is bad news for the CPI because it's going to weigh heavily into headline CPI. But all this, I think, is going to occur against the backdrop of a U.S. recession, which means real interest rates plunge even more than nominal rates. We go back to quantitative easing, and that's going to send gold and silver to new highs. It says that for silver to hit new highs, it's a much bigger move. That's why people should be buying it. I think that gold is going to outpace the cost of mining it, especially now. Like I said, oil has never been this cheap priced in gold. That's great for the gold mining companies because that's a major input. Also, their wages, the dollar has been relatively firm, and so the wages are low compared to where they would normally be with a big gold rise. Normally, the dollar is falling against a lot of these currencies where the wages are denominated, but that hasn't happened. So I think these companies are in great position. They've also cleaned up their balance sheets over the years, paid off debt. They're generating tons of cash right now. The big companies trading at ridiculous valuations relative to what's historically been the case. I think there's going to be a major consolidation in the industry. I think a lot of the smaller companies are going to end up getting bought up by the bigger companies because they're not going to have much to do with all the cash. It's going to be a lot cheaper than, funding exploration projects. Just buy up some of these super cheap companies, and get a sure thing instead of gamble. But, the fact that we've had so little investment over the years in exploration and development means that when the gold price is 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 higher, you're not going to see a lot of new gold coming to the market to take advantage of those higher prices because the industry just doesn't have the ability to produce it. It's going to take time to bring a lot of these mothballed mines back into production, and it's going to take even longer to find more gold. So we're not going to see a big increase in supply. We'll see some, but nowhere near the increase that we're going to see in demand. Of course, where does inflation come from? It comes from the Federal Reserve monetizing government debt. Well, government deficits have never been this large, and so we're going to have more inflation than ever before. It's just a question of when does the Fed go back to QE, and I think it happens early next year. The rate cuts are just the beginning. The QE is the next part because the Fed wants to get long-term interest rates back down. It wants to help the housing market. Well, just cutting short rates isn't going to do that. In fact, long-term rates are likely to rise despite these rate cuts because they are inflationary and the Fed does not control the long end of the curve, which has to price in the higher inflation that results from the easier monetary policy. So I think at some point, the Fed is going to go back to QE in order to artificially suppress the longer end of the curve because it can print money and buy those bonds to push down the yield. But that's just even more inflation. And so it's coming, and again, the politicians are not leveling with the public. They're saying we don't have to have any cuts to government spending. We can get all the Social Security we were promised. In fact, we can get more. Donald Trump says, hey, we're not even going to tax your Social Security benefits. So we're going to get more Social Security benefits. We're going to have lower taxes. Well, that means we're going to have higher inflation because we have to pay for government somehow. And it's clear the only way politicians are willing to charge us for government is through inflation because then they can blame it on somebody else. They don't have to accept the responsibility because they didn't physically take our money. They just took our purchasing power by creating money, and now they can blame it on, greedy businessmen or Putin or speculators or whoever is the scapegoat of choice. But they won't accept responsibility. So we're going to have a lot more inflation. I do think that the Fed's rate cut cycle is going to get aborted before they get back down to zero. I don't know that they'll make it all the way back down because I think that the foreign exchange markets may not cooperate, and we could go into a free fall with the dollar. Inflation could really start to get out of control. And so the Fed may have to start hiking rates in order to, to stop it.
Silver and gold are rising. Don't miss the moment. If this sparked your interest, hit that like button and subscribe for more game-changing insights. And don't forget to ring the bell, so you're the first to know when the next big opportunity drops. Your future is one click away. Thank you.